what do we mean by consciousness and how can we study it scientifically? All right, so consciousness can mean many different things, and we operationalize it in this lecture as follows. First is the level of consciousness. You are presumably fully conscious right now, and this wakefulness or alertness is on one, spectrum of the level of consciousness, and the loss of consciousness corresponds to something like in a coma or vegetative states due to the brain damage, and also deep general anesthesia that you might get during the surgery, or deep dreamless sleep, during every night is corresponding to loss of consciousness. And this grade of, full or high level of consciousness to low level of consciousness is the level of consciousness. Okay, and then at the given high level of consciousness, you are likely to experience something such as vision or audition or think thoughts and so on. And then this term of the thing is called contents of consciousness, and sometimes it's called awareness. And towards the end of the later weeks of the lecture, we will start to distinguish this between awareness and other things, but for now it's the same. And then this meaning of consciousness, like visual consciousness, auditory consciousness, corresponds to, for short, qualia. Singular is a quail, and feelings, like feelings of visual feelings or something like that, or emotion is included. And in the literature, sometimes it's called what it is like consciousness, like what it is like for me to experience something and so on. And sometimes it's also called conscious perception. All of this basically is the same as contents of consciousness you can think about. And self-consciousness or different types of the modalities, as long as you're conscious of something, that's included in this contents of consciousness definition. And this is a nice exemplar kind of conceptual figure by Steve Lorius. X-axis is the level of consciousness, and then y-axis is the content of consciousness. And then here he believes that there are some kind of dissociation between level and the contents. But for now, the important thing is that when you're reading the paper or encountering the lecture on consciousness, which one does it mean by consciousness? It's not to say that these two things are completely dissociable and also different things, but it's more to do with avoiding the confusion of what this talks or particular paper is about. So this is just one operational definitional issue. And then through this definition, we can start to think about consciousness through empirical research program. Phenomenology is another term to talk about study of the contents of consciousness. Okay, what it is like to see particular shade of the red and so on, or when you're paying attention, how does it feel like? And then experimental data is both behavioral data, but also brain data, and also some of the response reported from about the phenomenology. And then when over the last 30 years of studies and so on, especially experimental data has increased a huge amount, and so we need a theory to explain how these things are related. That's the sort of the progress of the consciousness research, and we are also going to triangulate consciousness through these three approaches. Okay, so don't think about the definition of consciousness as a static and also definitive, but rather tentative kind of thing. And then through the lectures over the next few weeks, I hope that your understanding of the definition of consciousness will change or gets refined. Okay, and then the next question is that how do we know our consciousness? Is it possible to study it an objective scientific method? How can we test that? So by phenomenology, I said that it's basically the contents of consciousness. And the important thing to realize is that we actually don't know our conscious phenomenology very well, in the sense that we can predict what it's like to be when you are shown this particular type of the stimulus, or when you are put into some kind of situation. How do I feel? All of these things are likely to be fixed before entering into the situation, but we actually don't know how it feels like very well unless you're into that situation. So the study of the phenomenology is going to be very important to understand consciousness. So one of the example is to experience this motion-induced blindness. And here's a link. And then I recommend you to watch this video with the friends or family or others, and at the same time, so that this video is not cheating in any way. Okay, so this is the illusion or the phenomena called motion-induced blindness. And what you're going to do is to stare at this green dot at the center, and then try to pay attention to these yellow dots on the top left, on the top right, and the bottom. And then if you are like me, you are likely to be experiencing like dots disappearing and appearing into your conscious experience, the yellow dots. So for example, yeah, now my top right one is not there, and the top left as well. But the top right now comes back. Oh, three of them all disappeared. And then they came back, and then bottom right is coming back, and so on. And then you can try it again. Do that, by yourself if you go to the YouTube. And important thing to realize is that this kind of thing, if you see this display, it's super obvious that there is something on the display, yellow, and then moving blue things, and your eyes and your brains are receiving this yellow dots and also blue dots at the same time and throughout time. However, sometimes it disappears from your consciousness. Okay, and as I said, spend some time to watch this with your friends or family, and then you will notice that people differ in terms of timing of the disappearance and the reappearance. Now the important thing for you to think is that what's the brain mechanism, or what's the reason why this yellow dots, which is super salient and process inside a brain, becomes sometimes invisible. It's really unclear, right? At least if you have some kind of hypothesis, that would be great to keep thinking about it for the rest of the lectures actually. Also, another thing is that to pay attention to one of the dots while you're watching. And if you're like me, again, when I pay attention to this top right part of the yellow dots, I actually experience a disappearance of the top right faster. Now it disappeared, and now another. Now finally top left one disappeared. Okay, and then if I try to pay attention to the left one, let's say, then yeah, top left one now disappeared. So this is a kind of weird phenomenon that paying attention induces the invisibility, facilitates invisibility. So if you have this preconception that attention is something that is most important to support consciousness, then it's really weird that paying attention makes things disappear. So you need to think about this. And most importantly, this type of phenomenology or phenomena is there, but unless you do this kind of proper experiment on yourself, you never notice that something like this can ever happen. So that's what I mean by we don't know actually the phenomenology, and we need to study the phenomenology more carefully. And because of the focus on non-conscious or everything outside of consciousness in the past, phenomenology is something that we don't know really well, even still. And then there are some people actually also claim that they don't experience this illusion actually, and most likely there is something about their brain, but we also don't know why there is this kind of particular individual difference. That's also another interesting question. All right. So various approaches to the phenomenology. Not only that, motionless blindness. If you follow this type of links, there are lots of visual illusions on the web. That's quite interesting in its own. And then you can see all these, striking type of the demo from this page or another link here. There's another, visual illusions, and also here. Okay, so all these, visual illusions are a very nice way to get to start thinking about phenomenology. How do we actually experience the world? That's a question. And then we can also study phenomenology through the individual difference or developmental or genetical kind of difference and the brain lesions. And that's something that we are going to look at through the lecture. And then different states, such as under the inattention or under the drug-induced stuff, or maybe sleep and so on. In the case of the auditory stimulation, we can study the phenomenology in various ways.